Online gaming, a basic staple nowadays. Features for everything from playing multiplayer with others to downloading new content for your games, and even patches to fix the buggy mess of a day one release. While PC gaming was well entrenched into online gaming throughout the 90s already, the home console market didn't experience it until the 2000s with the 128-bit era. Specifically with the Xbox and its robust Xbox Live featuring mega hits such as Halo Online, and the PlayStation 2's Online that featured everything from Socom to Final Fantasy XI Online. However, the oddball amongst them was the Nintendo GameCube. It's a system that is loved by many nowadays for its highly acclaimed single-player games, but never so online play. While having support for online via adapters that you could attach to the bottom of the console, it never saw any real support for it. But why? What happened for it to not to follow in the footsteps of its competition? Today on Gaming History, we look at the Nintendo GameCube's failed online service. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell too to further support us and keep creating new videos. Chapter 1. The new standards for online gaming. Nintendo and the online world have been hand in hand since the era of the Famicom in Japan, where via an add-on modem for the Famicom, the Satellaview for the Super Famicom, and the 64 disk drive for the Nintendo 64, those consoles all had online functionality for everything from checking the news to downloading games and even browsing the internet. In many ways, it was done before modern online gaming was even considered, but it was rather niche and unknown to most around the globe, as these were all Japan exclusives. However, all this started to change by 1998. The world was heavily becoming integrated with the World Wide Web, with more and more computers becoming available in every household, including internet connections. Sega at the time had been dealt a crushing blow with the Sega Saturn, and needed a juggernaut to spring interest in its next generation console. This was where they noticed this trend of interest on the internet, and decided that this should be the selling point of their next console, the Dreamcast, whereby people can play multiplayer with others online, or even attain DLC for their existing games. With that, they included a 56K modem with every Dreamcast released, except in Brazil for reasons, and this was all in order to capitalize on it. And in just a month after launch, it was proving successful, with nearly 1.55 million Dreamcasts registered online. The future of gaming was indeed looking to go heavily in the direction of online gaming. While Sega was reaping the rewards of that gamble, Nintendo's new next generation hardware was in the works. In 1999, their most recent venture in the online market via the 64 disk drive had proven to be a massive disaster due to the delays and limited market. However, with Sega paving a path for how online gaming should be done on console, it became clear that this is what Nintendo needed to focus on for their next generation console too. Chapter 2. A mixed approach. In 1999, Nintendo was well on its way to working on their new console, codenamed Project Dolphin. As with previous consoles, Dolphin was being prepared to have powerful hardware to keep up with the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2, but the difference this time was that online gaming was a must-have. Nintendo EAD General Manager Shigeru Miyamoto believed that this was indeed a necessity too. As stated, there's got to be something Dolphin has with the internet, because from now on, we can't create entertainment without thinking about the network communication. But while it might have appeared that Nintendo was planning to push for a robust online feature much like the Dreamcast, they were at an impasse on how to truly approach it. Within the same interview, Miyamoto felt that they didn't want to go too deeply into it, as they wished to focus more on giving a safe experience to children with their regular products. At this point, Nintendo was hesitant to join the online landscape, but knew they had to in some form, as pressure was mounting on them by the media and their competition, as otherwise they'd be left in the dust. And so the big reveal of the Dolphin, now dubbed the Nintendo GameCube, happened on August 24th to the 26th of 2000 at the Nintendo Space World event. Being heavily focused on these new consoles, a plethora of tech demos and games were shown off along with the console, the disc, the controller, and adapters for online gaming. These adapters were set to be fitted into one of the slots at the bottom of the GameCube. While a regular 56K modem did exist here for dial-up internet, a second adapter was here as well. At this point, high-speed internet connections were becoming popular and Nintendo came prepared with a broadband modem. Sega had already released a broadband modem within the market too for those wishing to upgrade their packed-in 56K modems, so Nintendo had to keep up. Despite this, however, Nintendo didn't formally comment on it at the show. They just existed on display on the show floor, but via a press conference with Shigeru Miyamoto, question did come up on the adapters, which Miyamoto jokingly expressed that people will now think the GameCube is a more multimedia machine, but confirmed the console is indeed set for online. However, this was despite Miyamoto's interview back in February 2000, where he stated that Nintendo would approach online gaming if they develop a unique approach rather than just following suit with the competition. Overall, being unique was what Nintendo's new approach was with this generation of gaming, with them dubbing it as the Nintendo difference. This was an attempt to make them stand out from the competition and therefore innovate in almost everything they were doing, including the online sphere. And so, being the year of the GameCube's launch, E3 2001 came up, and the Nintendo difference was the tagline they went in with. While showcasing a variety of games, they tried to show one of the Nintendo differences in the form of the Game Boy Advance to GameCube connectivity, where one could connect a Game Boy Advance as a controller to the GameCube. But nothing mentioned of the online capabilities within that press conference. However, despite Nintendo's own silence, Sega, who had recently changed into a third-party developer in May 2001, announced a port of their popular online RPG, Phantasy Star Online, was coming to the GameCube, and showed off a trailer for it at E3. It was becoming an odd instance that Sega cared more for Nintendo's online landscape than Nintendo themselves, it seems. The problem seems to have been more an issue of money. The director and general manager of Nintendo at the time, Satoru Iwata, felt that the only way they could support building an online network would be if it was profitable, and felt it would need a subscription service, which he felt was something the audience would not buy into. A statement that definitely didn't hold ground with that very generation's Xbox Live. In this case, Nintendo themselves were allowing the GameCube to have online capabilities. They just didn't wish to build the required servers and charge fees to maintain them, but allow third-party developers to run their own servers, such as Sega, to run their own online games, an approach that would make their console look leagues behind the competition. Chapter 3: Offline Supreme, Online Flounder. By the year 2002, the 128-bit era was fully in gear. Microsoft and Sony had robust online spheres, while Nintendo was practically still an offline company. The Xbox had an entire dedicated service to online gaming that had functionality that came straight out of the box. Meanwhile, the PlayStation had its network adapter released later that year and put into full use. Nintendo's network adapters released last amongst the three in October 2002, just in time for the release of Phantasy Star Online in the same month. The design had been updated for both models and fit into Serial Port 1 under the GameCube. With Sega running the servers and charging a subscription fee, this was no skin off Nintendo's back. However, because the GameCube didn't come with an adapter out of the box like the Dreamcast, Sega still had to adjust the game for offline play too, and thus added an offline split screen mode. Unlike both the Xbox and the PlayStation, however, the GameCube also did lack USB ports and therefore no option to plug in a general keyboard, which is where ASCII Corporation developed a special comically large keyboard controller for the console that was released only in Japan. All this just to work with the only available online game on the console at the time. The GameCube had at this point been an improvement over the Nintendo 64 in attaining multiplayer games across the board, so long as the disk space allowed for it. But what kept Nintendo from receiving online third-party games was entirely due to Nintendo's lack of a real strategy to promote it. Both Sony and Microsoft had built a dedicated plan on putting online on the forefront. Microsoft had a unified server whereby third-party companies can let Microsoft host their online games and handle the subscription fees and everything else on their behalf. Sony, while not having a unified server, was promoting its online sphere with its own first-party online games, such as Socom US Navy SEALs and EverQuest. Nintendo did neither. No unified server, and no first-party games as a means to promote the console as being an online machine. To make matters worse, its online adapters had to be purchased separately, unlike the Xbox and the Dreamcast that came with it. Thus, to the average consumer, the GameCube wasn't even known as an online machine. This, as such, deterred third-party developers from even bothering with making an online mode for their games, or porting games with heavy online play, as most consumers wouldn't even know online is part of the package. A waste of money for any developer. In fact, the first Battlefront game was even proposed to Nintendo to be made into a rare GameCube exclusive, but plans fell through due to the lack of an online strategy on Nintendo's behalf. That, along with several third-party developers having at one point signaled interest in developing games for their console, including Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, who wished to make an online Final Fantasy game that would appear on all consoles, including the GameCube. Namco, who even had 6 games planned that they wished to also make available for the GameCube, was there. And Splinter Cell Pandora's Tomorrow was going to have an online mode on the GameCube too, all of which appeared on the other 2 consoles, but completely skipped the GameCube due to Nintendo's lack of a strategy. As such, Nintendo was losing out big on attaining a plethora of popular online games from that era over the decision that online gaming wasn't going to be profitable as a business model, while instead focusing on trying to promote its not so popular Game Boy Advance connectivity mode that led to games that required it, such as Zelda 4 Swords Adventure, selling terribly for a console Zelda game. Chapter 4. Enter the Warp Pipe. By the end of the GameCube's life cycle, there were only 4 officially released online games, 2 of them being Phantasy Star Online and its updated version, Phantasy Star Episode 3, and the Japan exclusive game Homeland. However, owners of the GameCube definitely had a desire to play online. If Nintendo wasn't doing it, many wanted to find a way to do it themselves. The answer came in the form of LAN play. While there are 2 adapters to play GameCube online, the broadband adapter had an extra functionality, and it was that it let you connect using an Ethernet cable multiple GameCubes. This would allow each GameCube to run independently from one another on their own TV screen in order to play a supported multiplayer LAN game together. Only 3 games supported this function: 1080 Avalanche, Kirby Air Ride, and most famously, Mario Kart Double Dash. While the first 2 allowed for up to 4 GameCubes to be hooked up for 4-player multiplayer, Mario Kart supported 16 players across 8 connected GameCubes. And so entered Chad Paulson, a former director of new media at Warner Brothers Record, had recently enrolled into Indiana University. Paulson had a strong desire to play these 3 games with his friends, but being away at university in Indiana, his friends were nowhere near to play with. His desire led him to start linking up with a variety of other passionate GameCube owners who had been feeling just as frustrated at Nintendo's neglect at providing an online solution to their plethora of beloved multiplayer games. As Paulson put it best, "I don't think that there is one gamer out there that owns a cube that wouldn't like the opportunity to play Mario Kart online." And so this group of frustrated GameCube owners collaborated in making a project that would spoof the LAN capabilities by letting one hook the Ethernet cable not to another GameCube, but instead to a router that would hook straight into one's PC in order to utilize a program to connect one's GameCube to GameCubes with the same setup over the internet. This project was called the Warp Pipe Alpha. This genius take on fans doing it themselves took quick notice by the press of pulling the impossible, and the results were impressive with a stable connection at a high frame rate. Paulson himself even claimed that using his university internet connection, he got 55 to 60 frames out of Kirby Air Ride. And over time, updates to the program would come to further stabilize it, and instead could directly connect the GameCube to one's PC. And while many GameCube owners took strong advantage of it, these 3 games were all that were ever able to go online via this method, as no other games afterwards received LAN support. LAN modes were even planned for Mario Power Tennis and F-Zero GX, but were dropped. While it is unknown what the reasoning was for abandoning any further LAN support, it is possible that as it was a very niche idea that may almost exclusively serve best in tournaments, Nintendo may have not seen the need to spend extra work to work on LAN support as well. Epilogue: The Aftermath. By the end of 2005, the generation had ended, and Nintendo had received a crushing blow by falling now to third place, behind even newcomer Microsoft. A plethora of reasons existed for this, but one of those would indeed be online gaming. With a lack of a plan and a refusal to make one, Nintendo effectively had ignored the coming age of the internet that people in the 90s were accustomed to and interested in. As newer consoles came, Nintendo did finally start to adapt the online sphere, starting with the Nintendo DS and the Wii. This time, many first-party games came out and were officially endorsed and pushed by Nintendo as online-ready games to be played on their new brand of Nintendo Wi-Fi Online. It wasn't perfect as connection issues existed, but they had finally adapted to a long-requested feature. Even so, they were still quite behind the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and this issue kept going for the following generations. While Nintendo would adapt new features, Sony and Microsoft both were also adapting new features. It was, in other words, a game of constant catch-up by Nintendo each generation that still left them a step behind, and it might be all attributed to being basically at step 0 in the generation that started console online gaming. But ever since then, further tales came about what really went on in Nintendo's head during that era, most famously from former president of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aimé, on May 22nd, 2002, where he revealed and confirmed a number of details. Most prominent was the confirmation of how Nintendo wished to innovate when entering into the online market, as previously mentioned by Miyamoto in the 2000 interview. Their mindset was that they believed couch play offline multiplayer gaming was what they already excelled at better than anyone, so if they went online, they needed to find a way to excel in online play, something that they struggled to understand in other words during that era. But according to Reggie, once they decided to take Smash Bros online, it paved the path to games like Splatoon being online focused and doing very well especially. While it is far from a unique approach, it convinced Nintendo enough to keep online as a high priority ever since, and still it thrives today through not just online multiplayer, but downloadable games, content, and even playing old games from generations ago. Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more Nintendo and other games gaming history. Hit the like button and comment below on if you did play the GameCube online, or if you could, which game would you have played online. So everyone, thank you for watching.